Today I will be talking to you about anxiety. Anxiety is an ongoing issue throughout the U.S. today. According to ADAA, anxiety disorders are the most common mental illnesses in the U.S., affecting 40 million adults in the U.S. aged from 18 and up, or 18.2% of the population. With that being said, I am a part of that 18.2%. Anxiety has been something that I've struggled with more severely over the last couple years. And you might be asking yourself, what is anxiety? Some may or may not know what anxiety is. Anxiety is a feeling of nervousness, unease, and worry in certain situations and events. It can occur to many different people, and that's why it is so important to understand how it affects those people and the different ways it can affect. I struggle every single day with anxiety, and like I mentioned, it's been more severe over the last couple of years. I always felt like my anxiety was a burden, but I more or less realized that I was surrounding myself with the wrong people. Something that I love that is in my home is we have a plaque that says, "Life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful." And some people struggle with having anxiety because we think differently and we put ourselves in different types of situations. But that more or less doesn't change who you are as a person. I struggle with being emotional, I get overwhelmed, but all of those feelings are normal, and it's so important to understand that. With anxiety being one of the biggest mental illnesses, there are three important parts to understand when knowing how anxiety can affect people. The three main parts of my speech are 1, the 4 different types, 2, how and who it affects, and 3, the physical symptoms of anxiety. First, let's address what the types of anxiety are. There are many different types of anxiety one might be affected by. According to Beyond Blue, an estimated 31% of the U.S. adults experience any anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. And there are 4 common types of anxiety. 1, being generalized anxiety, which is the constant feeling of being worried and having the anxious feeling. 2, being social anxiety, an intense fear of being criticized, embarrassed, or humiliated, which is typically more in that public setting. And number 3, being specific phobias, being very fearful of a particular object or situation. And 4, panic disorder. A person may have frequent panic attacks with uncontrollable feelings of anxiety and more of the physical symptoms, which I will get into later. I do want to note all of these can vary from person to person, and they all affect every person differently. Next, I will be talking about who anxiety affects. Anxiety can affect many different groups of people and in so many different ways. According to Divisor, gender differences have been reported separately for anxiety and decision making. Women display higher levels of trait anxiety than men and are more vulnerable to developing that anxiety disorder. The most common age groups are 1, children between the ages of 13 and 18, and 2, more of the older population, while generalized anxiety is one of the more common ones. Lastly, I will be talking about the physical symptoms of anxiety. There are many physical symptoms of anxiety. According to Mind.org, some studies suggest that experiencing anxiety could increase the risk of developing certain long-term physical health problems, including diabetes, stomach ulcers, and heart problems. Some of the most common physical symptoms are 1, feelings of frequent doom, and that's followed by difficulty focusing. 2, depression. Those who struggle with anxiety or have a more increased risk of dealing with depression. 3, heart palpitations. They mostly occur with panic attacks. 4, an upset stomach, which is typically accompanied by nausea, which I definitely find myself struggling with all of these symptoms when I do struggle more heavily with my anxiety. I do again want to note that these are not all of the physical symptoms of anxiety, but some of the most common. In the end, anxiety is an ongoing issue today, and there are 3 main factors to understand when learning about or hearing about anxiety. First, It is important to understand what anxiety is and how it can affect people and with the different kinds. Secondly, the people it can affect, and lastly, the physical symptoms of anxiety. Every day I struggle with anxiety, whether it's the same anxiety that I dealt with the day before or a new challenge. Every day is very different. I've had to learn how to adapt and deal with it, and I have to say it has not been easy. So if you do struggle with anxiety, I do want to note that that does not make us different from other people. It is just changes how we interact with others and how we put ourselves into different situations. I can't emphasize enough how important surrounding yourself with people who understand your anxiety disorder and want to be there to help you. Every day we learn to adapt, and that's all we truly can do when you struggle with anxiety. It will get easier, I promise.